Howdy, folks. The Mario Brothers were not the only Nintendo IPs to get their own cartoon. Like with the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, DiC's writers and storyboard artists were very pressed for time, though probably a little less so with this cartoon. While Nintendo were involved with this, much like how they were with Mario, they weren't as confident about it and so only ordered 13 episodes. Also, unlike the Mario cartoon, which aired on weekdays Monday through Thursday, the Zelda show only aired on Fridays, thus limiting its views. Not surprisingly, the cartoon was cancelled after airing its 13th episode. The Zelda cartoon did get syndicated along with Mario. It ran on CBS originally, but it found its way onto Freeform and ran on that channel throughout 1991 and 1992. The show itself has gained a bit of a cult following as of recently. But is it deserving of that? I say, hell yeah! Alright, let's do it. The show always starts with a pretty cool intro that actually has a really good rendition of the Zelda theme. I should note that while this cartoon had its own intro, it didn't have its own end credits. Yeah, the Mario show's credits roll instead, probably to save some time and because the same people who worked on Mario also worked on this as well. Anyway, each episode is quite formulaic. The evil sorcerer Ganon has the Triforce of Power and wishes to gain the Triforce of Wisdom so that he can take over Hyrule. Thankfully, Link, Princess Zelda, and this annoying little shit right here named Sprite are always there to stop Ganon and win the day. That's how all 13 scenarios play out pretty much. Ganon gets a bright idea to steal the Wisdom Triforce. He usually employs the help of the monsters that are from the games, and Link, Zelda, and Sprite have to deal with it. Like I said, pretty formulaic, but you gotta remember, the guys who wrote for this cartoon were the same people who wrote for the Mario show. Similar writing styles aside, how are the characters portrayed? Pretty good, actually, if only maybe slightly off. This series was released in 1989, so the writers really didn't have much source material to work with, but they were actually able to give Link, Zelda, and Ganon some really good and kind of funny characteristics. For example, Link is shown to be a heroic and free-spirited teenage boy, with a slight hint of sarcasm.
Hey! Excuse me, princess!
Oh, don't worry. We'll get to that. Yeah, the sarcasm is actually one of Link's more negative traits, but he is pretty likable at the end of the day. Princess Zelda is pretty cool too. While she does get captured a few times, most of the time she's kicking ass alongside Link. She can be a bit snooty, but she's a princess, what do you expect?
Who dares to laugh at me?
She's also quite smart. A lot of times Zelda comes up with plans to stop Ganon from stealing the Courage Triforce. Speaking of Ganon, he's my favorite character in this show. He's not exactly intimidating, but this cartoon predates Ocarina of Time, and back in 1989, Ganon looked more like this. His warthog-like appearance is actually warranted. What makes me like Ganon the most is the fact that he's so fucking funny.
No, you imbeciles! Get them like this!
He's not a complete bumbling dumbass, though. In fact, he comes close to achieving his goals most of the time. It's more of what he says and his actions on the screen that are really funny. He's a likable bad guy. The only character I'm not really fond of is Sprite. And this leads me to my first gripe with this show. Sprite is freaking annoying. Almost a decade before Navi aggravated Zelda fans worldwide, this irksome little pest was buzzing around. If her pesky actions don't get to you, her shitty one-liners and high-pitched squeal voice soon will.
That's a lethal weapon you have there! Keep it away from me!
I'm just gonna come out and say it. I consider Sprite a little more annoying than Navi. At least Navi was helpful most of the time. But other than Sprite, the other characters are written quite well. Yep, he can definitely act like that. Speaking of which, Link has his annoying moments too. Don't get me wrong, he's actually my second favorite character, but as I mentioned previously, he's a bit too sarcastic sometimes, and his catchphrase, "Excuse me, princess," gets pretty damn irritating after the first episode.
Excuse me, princess. Excuse me, princess. Excuse me, princess. Excuse me, princess. Excuse me, princess.
By the way, he uses that catchphrase 29 times throughout the show. This was kind of a thing, though, with Deke. A lot of their cartoons would take a single joke and practically run it into the ground. Granted, a lot of shows that weren't from Deke did that too, so I tried to give it a pass. Also, I have to disagree with Shasta. I don't think Link is too arrogant. I think he's just an older teenager, and yeah, they can act like that. One of the aspects that I love about this cartoon are the interactions between Link and Zelda. Link and Zelda are already listed in my top 10 favorite video game couples, so seeing them act like this towards each other is cool to see. Granted, Link can come off as a bit of a creep sometimes.
Oh boy, smooching time.
But a lot of that is played for laughs, and Zelda can be just as flirty with Link.
Maybe after our picnic, you'd be willing to give me a kiss. Ooh.
Shut up and kiss me.
It's not just the romantic interactions they have that are great either. As I stated previously, Zelda and Link often battle Ganon and his monsters alongside one another. It's awesome to see the two duking it out side by side against the bad guys. I have a good feeling that if another show based off the games were to be made, we probably wouldn't see this much interaction between the main characters. At least, not to this show's degree. Whilst Ganon is mostly funny, much of this cartoon's humor is hit or miss. There's the aforementioned "excuse me, princess" gag that gets played out to the point of absurdity, but there are also other moments that, while sometimes can be humorous, most of the time they're just plain unfunny, like in this scene here, where Link dresses up like a bard from D&D.
Oh, this old thing? Had it for years.
Or in this scene where Sprite's magic goes apeshit. Fortunately, there is some genuine humor in this show to balance out the unfunny moments. The voice acting and some of the dialogue is another thing that's hit or miss in this cartoon. While I think Ganon and Zelda sound alright, Link kinda has a nasally voice. His voice isn't annoying despite that. Even though I don't like Sprite, her voice does sound correct for what she is, granted she's still obnoxious. Overall, I'd say the voice acting is fine. There are just a few things about it that aren't so great. The dialogue is where the real cheesy factor comes in, and I mean that in the best possible way. You can totally tell that the writers wanted this to be less funny than Mario, but couldn't help but write the occasional dumb line. It's funny bad, kinda like the dialogue in The Room.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
While we're on the subject of stuff you can hear in this cartoon, the music is fantastic. All the music is done orchestrally and it sounds amazing. Take a listen to this particular piece of the Zelda theme. I would show you folks more, but seriously, that was the only tune from this show I could find that didn't have noise. But believe me when I say the music here is really good. Deke nailed it when it came to making the songs from the game sound like they should, and for making them sound beautiful. Remember in the last review when I said that the Super Mario Bros. Super Show had really good animation? Well, the same holds true for Zelda. Link and Zelda look almost exactly like their video game counterparts, and so does Ganon. Even Sprite looks good. One thing the animators did exceptionally well, though, was how they drew the Zelda monsters. Everything from the Moblins, to the Octoroks, to even the friggin' Lynels look great. I can't confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the reason the characters are drawn so well is because the animators had access to the instruction booklets that came with the games. And mind you, those booklets were fully colored and quite detailed, so the animators had a really good idea of how to draw the characters. Another awesome thing about the animation is how the settings look. Believe it or not, Hyrule doesn't look too dissimilar to how it would look in one of the later Zelda games. More specifically, A Link to the Past. The dungeons that the characters explore are pretty cool looking too. Now those remind me more of the dungeons from the first game, and I like that because they made this, which was already cool, into this. In other words, the animators did a good job transitioning 8-bit dungeons into a cartoon. For all I know, the staff behind the animation might have actually played the games, and that's why this show looks so good. Despite the fact that this cartoon looks and sounds like the games, it doesn't really follow the narratives from those games. To some of y'all, that could be a deal breaker, but I tried to be as fair as possible about this for 3 main reasons. Reason 1 is because, as you know, the writers were strapped for time and they were pulling double duty. Reason 2 is because even though Nintendo were involved with this show, they weren't involved with it as much as they were from the Mario cartoon. From what I've heard, Nintendo gave the creators very vague descriptions of the stories from the games. And reason number 3 is because there wasn't that much source material to work with anyway. By the time this show aired, there were only 2 Zelda games to work off of. Sure, the plots in those games were pretty detailed, but in all honesty, it's still not that much. Granted, despite this flaw with the source material, I feel that the cartoon staff was still able to make an entertaining show. Well, I think I've covered the show pretty well. So, do I recommend it? Yes, I do. Despite the objective flaws. The Zelda cartoon is no masterpiece. In fact, it's downright bad. But it's bad in a good way. The flaws of this show are what ironically make it entertaining. The dialogue can be pretty dumb, but also funny. Link's catchphrase might be a tad annoying, but he at least had a personality. And the humor, whilst not always hitting its mark, can get a chuckle out of you from time to time. Also, this cartoon has really good music and animation, plus I love the interactions that Link and Zelda have on screen. As far as my opinion goes for the Zelda show, it's totally worthy of its cult status. There's a reason this cartoon has a fan base, and it's because of effort. The creators were hella under pressure while making this, and it could have come out real shitty, like how Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm did. All in all, I suggest you folks to watch this. The negatives of this cartoon do bring it down to a B for bad, but yeah, I recommend watching it. Best of all, you viewers can by following the link in the description to Wildbrain's channel. You'll find all 13 episodes there. Alright, Shasta, it's your turn to share your final thoughts. got one more show to go, and in my humblest opinion, it's the coup de grace of them all. I'll see y'all in the next episode where we take a look at Captain N, the Game Master.